So this is a track for Furious 7. You can see that there are various sections that are divided by two beat type bars. That's just to hit the right points in the movie, I assume. So here's how it sounds. As you can hear that was the track that we did up to. There are more variations in the original. You can try to attempt to copy those if you want, but we just done it up to about 45 seconds. Now let's start with the main thing. The drums, which is the basis for the track, because Brian Tyler is a very competent drummer, so he plays the drums on this track. Okay, let's open up the drums. We use a Logic drum kit, which you can find. I have a preset called Yuri SoCal, and basically it's a SoCal kit that you can find in the Logic drums, except for I'm using SoCal 2 as the snare. The rest of them are pretty much the same. Yep, kicks are SoCal 2 as well. Toms, you can't change them, so they're pretty much straight up. Everything else is about the same. Now I added a little compressor here, and I use the classic drums one because it gives a nice punch to it, and it's got the aggression that suits this track. So you can see that the snare, yep, has a nice punch to it, and the kick as well. So here's how the drums sound just by themselves. It's a bit of fancy playing. There's no real reverb on it because I felt that it wasn't really necessary. So that's the drums for the first bit. And they sound pretty much the same throughout. It's just the playing that's different. Now, you know the accents, the big accents, the pum, pum, pum. On the first section, this whole accent here, everything needs to be big. So the first thing I did was to add a bit more percussion with the European folk kit. You can see from World European folk kit. It's got some nice big toms that you can use to sort of enhance the sound. Here's what it sounds like. And it just makes it a bit bigger when paired with the drums. And I added a compressor as well, and this one is an opto-tom compressor, which I like for the big tom-like sounds. And it just makes it that little bit bigger as well. And there's a wee bit of reverb over here. And the reverb, just to be sure, all of them go to the same reverb, which is a large space warm hall reverbs. Not too large, just enough to give it some space. Now, for the brass, I use an under orchestral brass trombone staccato. I kind of like the vibe that you get from that, and of course some reverb as well. And I just octave them. You can see them just like that. You can have a listen to them. Pretty straightforward, and you got to pair that with some full string staccato. I prefer the full string staccato to the individual sections because I felt like they were a bit stronger. Attack and texture is just a bit better, and they sound like this. And they work in harmony with the trombones. I use another full string staccato, same thing, with some reverb as well. And why I use the same track separately, because this one is the low end, so I can control the volumes separately. So you get this starting to get a bit of that strength, that power together with the drums. And after that, you have these viola lines or violin lines. I just picked the orchestral string viola staccato, gave it some reverb, and that's generally it. So the stuff that fills in the spaces. And then there's this synth, and this is the interesting bit. Let me just play how it sounds like. It's this rhythmic type thing going on. So it's a bit like noise, but it adds to the rhythm when you put it together, especially with the drums. And how I got that rhythm was that I opened up Alchemy. Now I'm just going to turn off the ARP for a moment. And I picked a sound called Massive Wall of Noise. And I changed the attack and a bit of the crossfade. And the decay as well, if I'm not mistaken. Just follow what we have over here. And you can listen to the sound. It's just this very noise-like sound. And what I did was, instead of using the ARP in the synth itself, I turned on the Logic ARP, and it's just a standard 1/16 one. That's it. And yeah, you get that intro as well. So how do you get that change in rate? Basically, I automated the change in rate. If you turn on the arpeggiator rate, you can see that it's 1/16 here. And then it goes to 1/32, and then it goes back to 1/16. And certain bits, it goes up to 32 again. So that's pretty straightforward. And for the rest of the intro, just a bit of texture. This is an acid trance pattern. Same, acid staccato. And we use the ARP as well. So 1/16, same thing, and you get that kind of sound. That's it. And I just wanted a bit more noise, so I added a bike riser just to give it that rise. Hang on. No, that. So you can hear a bit of that, and you hear all three of them together. It's got a bit of energy about it. That's pretty cool. And then there's a little trailer FX as well, which is one of my favorites, which you can find under Textures, FX, Trailer FX 3. Just to give it that bit of electronic type transition. Yep. And yes, so at the end of that pattern, you see a violas, and I just added some orchestral strings, violas tremolo. Here's how they sound. Same thing as always with the brass and the strings. Make sure you give it some reverb. Send to bus 1 as well. All of them are the same. And what I really like, this one is good for transitions, which is a crescendo horn. So you got an orchestral brass French horns crescendo, and here's how it sounds. It's quite nice. The only thing is that you can't really control the length of the crescendo, which means in this case, if you look at the MIDI, you can see it starts a bit earlier, because otherwise it won't hit the crescendo at the right point, which is here. So if you listen to that part. So you can hear that it starts early. It's meant to actually start right on this bar here, but it starts one beat earlier. And if you notice, everything is pretty much quantized to sharp 16s, you know, straight up. Very hard quantization, because I feel like this one has got a bit of electronic type mix, and I think it works pretty well. Now, there's also an extra guitar bass thing at the back. And you can see under guitars, electric guitars, I added an 80s electric guitar. I sent it through an app, which was a boutique retro distort. I kind of like the tone, it suited it really well. And here's how it sounds. So you put it all together, so you get that big sound. Here we go. Here we go. So you get the big sound. So you get that big sound. Here we go. And for the transitions, I like Trailer FX. Trailer FX is quite some interesting things. I'm using Trailer FX 1 here under Textures, FX, Trailer FX 1. And here's how it sounds. Just a bit of transition sound here. But the main thing comes from the ES2. Now, I used the brightest fuzz. It's got a nice fuzzy type sound. And what I did was I changed the bend range to 12 over here. Just clicked on it and pushed it up. And that means when I do my pitch bend, it goes by octaves, which is exactly what I needed over here. So this is what I did. So it feels like this little drop. That's kind of how I did it. Now for the second section, everything's pretty straightforward as well. I have a full strings legato here, because this is just the blaring strings. And here's how they sound. And I pair that with trombones legato. It's under orchestral brass trombones legato. And here's how they sound. So you put them together, it's got this big majestic sound. Something like maybe a big guitar is supposed to feel like with the drums. Now something I added over the drums is it's an Apple loop. And you can find it over basic hi-hat pattern. And yeah, I just wanted to add a bit more rhythm to the back end of it. So the drums by themselves sound like that. Pretty alright, but you want it to have that running feeling, right? So with the hats. So that's pretty cool. And also, since we're adding that synth noise type thing under it, you get a bit more rhythm. And now with the acid trance, just as like a bass line. Now with all these repeating patterns, right, they tend to be great for rhythms that are ongoing. You get a kind of movement type feeling. And because the snare just needed to be a bit bigger, I used from the drums and percussion, single drum snare, acoustic snares, I added a D126. Here's how it sounds. just a bit more. So here's how it sounds together. Now this third section over here is pretty much the same as the first section in terms of rhythm and instruments and how they sound. Added bigger trailer FX hits. What I love about trailer FX is you can get quite a bit of big sounds from them just to augment the rhythms already there. And on to the next section. This one is like really got this big chunky feeling. So on the 80s electric guitar, you get this kind of playing. So it sounds a little bit artificial, but when you start putting stuff together with the bass lines and together with everything in, it starts to come together better. And you can see as well, we use the French horns here. They don't really come in right on the dot because it's too long, and even then they end up a bit early. So you gotta sort of play with it when you have limited instruments. So it's supposed to come in here, but this trombone sort of make up for it for now. So you put them together. You can kind of cheat a little bit with the sound as long as you get the right vibe. And for the transition, what I did was I found this airplane sound. Now there's Airplane Flight 2, Jet Fighter in Flight 2. I kind of like the rising sound, so I used this, I dragged it into the track, and then I just cut the sections that I wanted, and I just basically faded it in. So here's what you get. Like that. And these parts are just programming the rhythm. It's pretty straightforward, but one thing to look out for was that I had to drop the volumes of the trombones and the full strings as well, and the basses, just to make everything balance out in the mix. It's not a particularly detailed mix that you're hearing over here, but it kind of works out. So everything sort of goes according to the rhythm here. So you got that rhythm. It doesn't sound particularly great, but when you put it with the drums, it does sound more organic. There's also this bass going on here, just to give it that fatness in the bottom. So you get this. And basically the rest are the drums, but you get the hi-hats on top as well. And now with the hats. So yeah, that's kind of it.